All right, let's dive into something that, let's be honest, has probably happened to every single one of us: losing your voice. Today, we're going to get a look under the hood, deep inside our throats to see what's actually happening on a microscopic level when our voice just gives out.
You know that feeling, right? You go to a concert, you sing along to every song, you scream your head off, and the next morning you sound like you've been gargling gravel. Or maybe you've had a day packed with meetings and presentations, and by the end of it, your voice is just gone. It's such a universal experience.
So what's actually going on? Well, that raspiness, that hoarseness, it's not just some random thing. It's physical. It's happening because of tiny but really significant changes to the super delicate structures in our throat that actually make the sound, our vocal folds.
Now, the official kind of sciencey term for these changes is structural pathologies. I know it sounds a little intense, but all it really means is that the physical tissue structure of the vocal folds has been altered in some way. And even the smallest change can have a massive impact on your voice.
So how do these little changes mess up our sound so much? Well, I want you to think of your vocal folds like a pair of guitar strings. To get a nice, clear note, those strings need to be perfectly smooth and vibrate cleanly together. A structural pathology, that's like getting a tiny knot or a little frayed spot on one of those strings. It totally changes the string's mass and how stiff it is. And crucially, it messes up what we call glottal closure. That just means the two strings can't press together to make a clean seal. When air leaks through that little gap, the sound gets all distorted. And that's where you get that hoarse, breathy, or weak voice.
Okay, so when we're looking at these changes, the very first, most critical question a doctor asks is this: which side of a huge divide does this fall on? Is it malignant or is it benign? This is, without a doubt, the starting point for everything else. Malignant lesions, as you can probably guess, are the serious ones. They're cancerous. They can spread and invade other tissues. Benign lesions, on the other hand, do not spread. And here's the really good news. Benign conditions are, by a long shot, the most common cause of voice problems. So for the rest of our time here, we're going to focus in on the three most common benign issues. So let's open up our first case file: vocal nodules. You've probably heard this term thrown around, maybe with singers or teachers, but what exactly are they?
Honestly, the absolute best way to picture a vocal nodule is to think of it as a callus. You know, just like you'd get a callus on your hand from rubbing or friction over and over again, you get nodules on your vocal folds from them hitting each other too hard, too often. It's your body's way of toughening up in response to all that stress.
And just like calluses, they've got some very specific tells. They're caused by chronic misuse. This isn't a one-time thing. They almost always show up in pairs, right across from each other, at the exact midpoint of the vocal folds. And why there? Well, that's the spot that gets the most impact when they vibrate. You see them a lot in kids, screamers, and in adult women, but fun fact, they're actually pretty rare in adult men.
Okay, so how do you get rid of them? This part is absolutely crucial, because nodules are caused by a behavior, by how you're using your voice. The number one treatment is not surgery, it's voice therapy. It's all about retraining how you speak or sing to let those calluses heal and just go away on their own. Surgery is really a last resort, only if therapy doesn't do the trick.
So that's the deal with nodules. But what happens if the damage isn't from that slow, chronic wear and tear? What if it's from one single dramatic event? Well, that brings us to our next case file: vocal polyps. They might sound similar, but they're a whole different ballgame.
You got it. If nodules are calluses, then polyps are blisters. Simple as that. A polyp is a fluid-filled lesion, and it often has its own little active blood supply, which helps explain why they can just pop up so suddenly and sometimes get pretty big pretty fast.
And their fast facts paint a totally different picture from nodules. They're usually caused by one single traumatic event, like screaming your lungs out at a football game, not long-term misuse. And they almost always appear on just one vocal fold, not both. They're also mostly an adult thing. You don't really see them in kids.
And this slide just lays it all out perfectly. Let's just look at this side by side for a second. Nodules, chronic cause, they appear on both sides and you treat them with therapy first. Polyps, caused by a single event, usually on one side, and they often need surgery. Calluses versus blisters. Getting that distinction is so key.
All right, on to our final case file, which adds another little twist. Let's talk about vocal cysts. These aren't calluses and they aren't blisters. There's something else entirely.
So a cyst is also a fluid-filled sac. But here's the kicker.
Unlike a polyp that kind of sits on the surface, a cyst is embedded inside the tissue of the vocal fold. It's this little self-contained sphere stuck down in there, and that location makes all the difference in the world.
And this is why it's such a big deal. Because that cyst is stuck inside the vocal fold, it basically creates a stiff, dead spot that just can't vibrate. So back to our guitar string analogy, imagine a tiny section in the middle of the string is suddenly encased in concrete. That part just isn't moving. This completely wrecks the beautiful flowing vibration of the vocal fold, which is why even a teeny tiny cyst can cause huge voice problems, especially for singers.
And because of what they are, a physical object stuck inside the tissue, the way you treat them is totally different from nodules. It's not a behavior problem you can just train away.
Yep. For cysts, the path is really clear. The only thing that works is surgery. Because it's a physical embedded sac, no amount of voice therapy is going to make it magically disappear. It has to be carefully, surgically removed to let the vocal fold be flexible and vibrate freely again.
So we've gone through these different case files, the calluses, the blisters, the embedded sacs. What's the big takeaway? What's the one path forward if you feel like something's wrong with your voice?
Look, this might be the single most important thing I say in this entire explainer. It's cool to understand the difference between all these things, but please, do not try to diagnose yourself. The only person who can tell you what's really going on is a physician, an ear, nose, and throat doctor who can actually take a look at your vocal folds with a scope. At the end of the day, your voice is your signature. It's so uniquely you. It's how you share your ideas, your feelings, who you are. So if it's feeling off, if it's strained or tired, don't just ignore it. It's trying to tell you something. Listen to what it's saying. Thanks so much for tuning in.